flat Earth has long been denigrated, derided, and disparaged as being the most crackpot of all conspiracy theories, marginalized, mocked, and ridiculed for centuries as being an ignorant, ancient, unscientific worldview. But the facts of the matter are far from what you have been told. When thoroughly examined and diligently researched with an open mind, any skeptical, critical thinker will find it is actually the tilting, wobbling, spinning spaceball Earth promoted by NASA and taught in schools that is truly ridiculous and unscientific. The following are 20 ways anyone can prove for themselves that Earth is a level, stationary plane. 1. Common sense. It cannot be overstated or overemphasized. The most important thing to realize and most obvious way to know you are not spinning on a ball is your own common sense and lived experience. You have always and will always experience yourself as living right side up on a motionless Earth, with the sun, moon, and stars revolving over and around you. This is common sense, and what everyone in the world personally experiences every day of their lives. We are taught to believe otherwise, however, many things completely contrary to our own common sense and experience from a very early age. We are told that people living down under the spinning ball Earth in Australia are actually living upside down relative to those residing in the northern hemisphere, while an invisible force, strong enough to hold people, buildings, and oceans stuck to the underside of a rapidly rotating ball, but weak enough to allow birds, bugs, and planes to take off and fly with ease, keeps Earth's atmosphere spinning in perfect balance and holds everyone firmly to the surface without crushing us. We can clearly see that the horizon is horizontal, but we are told it curves. We can feel that the Earth under our feet is motionless, but we are told it moves. We can observe the luminaries revolving around us, but we are told it is us that revolves. It is obvious that stars are stars, but we are told that stars are suns. We can see the sun is bigger than the stars, but we are told stars are bigger than the sun. We can see the sun and moon are the same size, but we are told the sun is 400 times larger. It is obvious that up is up and down is down, but we are told there is no such thing. As stated by flat Earth author David Wardlaw Scott, with the modern astronomer, there is theoretically neither up nor down, though his experience belies his assertion every time he looks up to the heavens or down to the ground. Such aberration of intellect is really to be pitied. The 3rd century philosopher Lactantius was similarly perturbed about the idea, stating, "A sphere where people on the other side live with their feet above their heads, where rain, snow, and hail fall upwards, where trees and crops grow upside down, and the sky is lower than the ground? The ancient wonder of the hanging gardens of Babylon dwindle into nothing in comparison to the fields, seas, towns, and mountains that pagan philosophers believe to be hanging from the earth without support. Truly, the idea that people are standing, ships are sailing, and planes are flying upside down on certain parts of Earth, while others are tilted at 90 degrees and all other impossible angles, is utter absurdity and an affront to common sense. In fact, common sense is the first casualty of globe belief. No child or unindoctrinated man would ever conclude or even conceive, if given to their own devices, based on their own personal observations, that Earth was a spinning ball revolving around the sun. When children are indoctrinated from a very early age to abandon their common sense and lived experience of a geocentric plain Earth in favor of this nonsensical, heliocentric globe model taught in schools, a schism occurs in their psyche. No longer can they trust their own senses and experience, and instead must trust information completely contrary to it, taught by supposed experts and authority figures who insist their version of reality is correct. When children see that every adult around them believes wholeheartedly in the spinning globe, and hear that only our ignorant, unscientific ancestors believed otherwise, They readily abandon the empirical evidence of their senses and adopt the prevailing nonsensical model. As stated by Flat Earth author ists, the one thing the fable of the revolving earth has done, it has shown the terrible power of a lie. A lie has the power to make a man a mental slave, so that he dares not back the evidence of his own senses, to deny the plain and obvious movement of the sun he sees before him. When he feels himself standing on an earth utterly devoid of motion, at the suggestion of someone else, he is prepared to accept that he is spinning furiously round. When he sees a bird flying and gaining over the ground, he is prepared to believe that the ground is really traveling a great number of times faster than the bird. And finally, in order to uphold the imagination of a madman, he is prepared to accuse his maker of forming him a sensiferous lie. 2. Fake photographs. One of the main reasons the average person believes the world is a globe is because of the globular Earth images and video footage provided by NASA and other space agencies. Hundreds of such pictures and thousands of videos featuring a globe Earth are freely available on the internet, yet most people never critically examine them with a skeptical eye. From the earliest photographs to the latest live streams, NASA and the world's other space agencies continue to be exposed for their Hollywood-style trickery. When conscientiously compared, contrasted, and investigated for inconsistencies, it turns out every single image and video showing a globular Earth has been manipulated in some way. All globe videos, for example, are achieved using either a fisheye lens to curve the horizon, or created completely through CGI technology. One clear instance of the latter is NASA's 1990 time-lapse video of Earth supposedly filmed by their Galileo space telescope from 1.3 million miles away. This video features the Earth globe spinning in space, uncut for 25 hours, and shows the exact same clouds present without ever dissipating, changing shape or location the entire time. In reality, if you watch clouds in the sky for several minutes, three things will inevitably happen. The clouds will all move, some will morph, gradually changing shape, and others will dissipate and disappear completely. In NASA's official footage of the spinning ball Earth, however, the entire world's cloud cover doesn't dissipate, morph, or move for 25 hours, which is, of course, impossible, and proof of fakery. A good example of fisheye lens fakery is the famous 2012 GoPro Red Bull jump, where skydiver Felix Baumgartner was lifted to a record-breaking 128,000 feet in a stratospheric balloon, then jumped back to Earth. 7 GoPro cameras on the outside of the craft, and strapped to Felix himself, recorded the entire ascent and descent. Astute observers will notice that from ground level all the way up to the 24-mile apex, the horizon is significantly curved and remains equally so for the entire ascent. This is because the curve is artificial and being caused by the GoPro camera's standard-issue fisheye lens. Once Felix reaches his peak altitude and the door of his craft opens, an inside camera mounted behind him without a fisheye lens reveals the truth, showing a perfectly flat horizon still at eye level, 128,000 feet high. As for the hundreds of supposed photographs available of the globe, NASA readily admits that these are composite images and not actual photographs. They claim the composites are made by taking strips of data sent from satellites, spliced together in Photoshop, and colorized for the final creation. NASA's senior program analyst and lead data visualizer, Robert Simon, admitted in an interview that they are photoshopped because they have to be. When compared side by side and viewed with a discerning eye, the inconsistencies become obvious. The coloration of the land and oceans and relative size of the continents drastically changes between images, and they often feature far too little land mass for 50% of a globe. Several of NASA's blue marble Earth images have repeat instances of exact cloud patterns clearly copied and pasted into place. Computer enhancements done on Earth images taken during the Apollo missions also show similar photo trickery. When hues are removed from the black backgrounds and brightness enhanced, distinct rectangular artifacts appear around the globe where they were pasted in, again proving them to be doctored composites. Furthermore, when NASA's Earth pictures are compared with those from the Russians, Chinese, and other space agencies, the differences become evident, and the fact that they are all simply Photoshop images becomes obvious. If NASA and the world's space agencies could provide real, legitimate photographs and videos of a globe, they most certainly would. So the fact that they continue producing and pumping out nothing but fisheye fakery and CGI cartoons is strong evidence that Earth is not what they claim. 3. Water. The natural physics of water are that once contained and undisturbed, the surface will always remain horizontal. This fundamental physical property of water is why it has been used as a leveling tool by builders and engineers for millennia. Whether in a bucket, bathtub, pond, lake, or an ocean, the surface of water at rest always remains flat and doesn't have the ability to show convexity or any shape whatsoever upon its surface. This fact is easily demonstrable and empirically verifiable, but completely at odds with what we are told about the globe. For Earth to be globular and over 70% covered in water, the oceans must be somehow curving around and sticking to all sides of a rapidly spinning ball suspended in space. These are examples of water bending or sticking to a surface, which is nothing but a fallacy of false equivalency, as these only happen at a very small scale, the size of a coffee cup. The claim is entire oceans wrapping around and sticking to the underside of a spinning ball, not a water droplet or the meniscus in a glass filled to the brim. NASA has also recently taken to faking CGI water balls using augmented virtual reality technology in an attempt to convince the public that water can behave this way. This kind of demonstration, done in a reference frame inaccessible to 99.99% of the population, however, is unrepeatable by the world's scientists and skeptics, and is therefore not scientific or permissible as proof of anything. First, they claim only massive objects the size of Earth have this attractive property. Then, as evidence, they show a phenomenon allegedly outside of our earthly reference frame. In other words, they are claiming bodies of water can bend around, stick to a ball, and show curvature upon their surface, but only at a scale too big for the public to recreate. Then they are claiming water can ball up and float suspended in air, but only in a reference frame too far for the public to recreate. As for water level, globe defenders have actually attempted to completely redefine the term level just to fit with their dogma. The true definition of level is a flat horizontal plane with no deviation in elevation along its surface. Water always reliably seeks and maintains its own level, and that is why it has been used in spirit levels and construction projects from time immemorial to create perfectly horizontal structures, no matter their size. Globe zealots, however, unsatisfied with this obvious truth and clear definition, have attempted to redefine level to instead mean curved. Their globe-friendly version of level means equal heights around a ball when measured from a central point. The fact of the matter is, however, that nobody has ever reached this hypothetical center point of the hypothetical Earth globe, so their redefined term cannot be tested or falsified. Until that day, rest assured there is good reason we call it sea level and not sea curve. 4. The horizon. The horizon is always perfectly horizontal, 360 degrees around the observer, regardless of altitude. If Earth was actually a globe, no matter how large, as an observer ascended, the horizon would remain fixed in position and fall below the observer the higher climbed. In reality, all amateur balloon, rocket, plane, and drone footage filmed without a fisheye lens at maximum altitudes of over 20 miles high show a completely flat horizon still rising to eye level. Only in NASA and other space agency footage does the horizon ever curve or appear below the observer's eye level. In the heliocentric model, the horizon is claimed to be the physical curvature of their globe, and the reason boats receding from a shore-bound observer disappear from view. This was actually one of the original alleged globe-Earth proofs presented by Aristotle and still parroted by believers today. But by using modern zoom technology, we now know that the horizon is not the physical curvature of a globe, and those boats can be zoomed back into full view. This is because the horizon is not an objective physical phenomenon at all, but rather a subjective optical phenomenon based on an individual observer's perspective. If the horizon was actually the objective physical curvature of a globe, then objects receding beyond it could not be zoomed back into view, and it would remain fixed as an observer ascended. In reality, however, the horizon rises along with the observer, no matter how high, and modern zoom technology can bring objects receding beyond it back into full view. This proves the horizon line is not some objective point of curvature on a convex Earth, but rather the subjective vanishing line of perspective from a given observer's point of view. Quoting Earth Not a Globe by Dr. Samuel Robotham, on the shore near Waterloo, a few miles to the north of Liverpool, a good telescope was fixed at an elevation of 6 feet above the water. It was directed to a large steamer just leaving the River Mersey and sailing out to Dublin. Gradually, the masthead of the receding vessel came nearer to the horizon, until, at length, after more than 4 hours had elapsed, it disappeared. The ordinary rate of sailing of the Dublin steamers was fully 8 miles an hour, so that the vessel would be at least 32 miles distant when the masthead came to the horizon. The 6 feet of elevation of the telescope would require 3 miles to be deducted for convexity, which would leave 29 miles, the square of which, multiplied by 8 inches, gives 560 feet, deducting 80 feet for the height of the main mast, and we find that, according to the doctrine of rotundity, the masthead of the outward-bound steamer should have been 480 feet below the horizon. Many other experiments of this kind have been made upon sea-going steamers, and always with results entirely incompatible with the theory that the Earth is a globe. 5. Gyroscopes. Gyroscopes are precision instruments consisting of a wheel mounted inside 2 or 3 gimbals, which provide pivoting support and allow the wheel to rotate about a single axis. As the entire contraption moves and shifts angles, the gimbals move and shift accordingly, but the inner wheel never changes its angle with respect to its initial reference frame. This unique property is called rigidity in space, meaning the inner wheel maintains its orientation and axis of rotation in relation to space and not to the surface of the Earth. This means that the base of a gyroscope set in motion with its axis in a vertical position, then placed on a table for 6 hours, should rotate 90 degrees with the spinning globe Earth. As the globe turns under the gyroscope for 6 hours, the axis should slowly turn from vertical to horizontal. This experiment has been tested many times with several full-length videos available online, and never does the gyroscope's vertical axis shift whatsoever. If the heliocentric model were true, not only would the gyroscope detect the alleged 1,000-mile-per-hour spin of the globe, but also the 67,000-mile-per-hour revolution around the sun, the entire solar system's 500,000-mile-per-hour spiral around the Milky Way galaxy, and the entire galaxy's multi-million-mile-per-hour journey through the universe. Since these hypothetical motions never register on precision gyroscopes, it is clear that they, just like the spinning ball Earth they're based on, do not exist. Gyroscopes are also the technology behind inertial guidance systems and airplane artificial horizon indicators. When military jets are performing loops, barrel rolls, and other dogfighting maneuvers, the artificial horizon allows pilots to easily see their exact orientation relative to Earth without having to rely on looking out the window. If Earth was truly a sphere, by simply flying level, airplane artificial horizon indicators should show a steady decline unless pilots constantly correct their altitudes downwards so as not to fly straight off into so-called outer space. For example, a pilot traveling 500 miles per hour over a globe Earth 24,900 miles in circumference would have to descend an average of 2,777 feet, or over half a mile per minute. Otherwise, in 1 hour's time, the plane would be 31.5 miles higher than desired. In fact, if Earth was really a ball, there should be no reason to use rockets for flying into outer space, because simply flying an airplane straight at any altitude for long enough would already inevitably send you there. 6. Compasses. The mariner's compass is another precision instrument which can only work on a level plane Earth, and is an impossible and nonsensical tool for use on a globe. It simultaneously points north and south over a flat surface, and must be held flat to work, yet claims to be pinpointing two constantly moving geomagnetic poles at opposite ends of a spinning sphere originating from a hypothetical molten metal core. If compass needles were actually drawn to the North Pole of a globe, the opposing south needle would actually be pointing up and off into outer space. Likewise, observers holding a compass in Antarctica would be at the bottom of the ball, so to show north, the needle would have to point down at their feet. If the so-called South Pole in Antarctica were truly the southern pole of a magnet, observers would be able to walk in a circle with their backs to the South Pole and have their compass needles show north being in front of them in every direction. This feat has never and will never be achieved, because the so-called South Pole is simply an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice, marked with a red and white barbershop pole and topped with a little metal ball Earth. The actual type of magnetism present on Earth is similar to a ring magnet found in loudspeakers, which have a central North Pole, with the opposite South Pole being all points along the outer circumference. This perfectly describes the magnetism of our flat Earth, whereas the alleged source of magnetism in the globe model is emitted from a hypothetical molten magnetic core in the center of the ball, which they claim conveniently causes both poles to constantly move and thus forever evade independent verification at their two ceremonial poles. 7. Plain sailing. Ship captains in navigating great distances at sea never need to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their calculations. Both plain sailing and great circle sailing, the most popular navigation methods, use plane, not spherical trigonometry, making all mathematical calculations on the assumption that the Earth is perfectly flat. If the Earth were in fact a sphere, such an errant assumption would lead to constantly glaring inaccuracies. Plain sailing has worked perfectly fine in both theory and practice for thousands of years, and plane trigonometry has time and again proven more accurate than spherical trigonometry in determining distances across the oceans. It is so commonly used at sea, Navigation in Theory and Practice states that, in practice, scarcely any other rules are used but those derived from plain sailing. The great and serious objection to plain sailing is that longitude cannot be found by it accurately, although in practice it is more frequently found by it than any other method. So both latitude and longitude are found most often and most accurately by assuming Earth to be flat, more accurately even than assuming the Earth to be spherical. Quoting 100 Proofs Earth is Not a Globe by William Carpenter, "If the Earth were a globe, a small model globe would be the very best, because the truest, thing for the navigator to take to sea with him. But such a thing as that is not known. With such a toy as a guide, the mariner would wreck his ship of a certainty. This is a proof that Earth is not a globe." 8. Construction. Surveyors, engineers, architects, and builders are never required to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their projects. Plumb bobs are used to establish plumb vertical datums, with spirit levels then used to establish horizontal datums and lay flat foundations across great expanses. If Earth was actually a globe of given proportions, builders would find themselves constantly deviating from both their established vertical and horizontal datum lines. But in reality, canals, railways, bridges, tunnels, and other large projects are always cut and laid horizontally, often over hundreds of miles, without any allowance for curvature, and no deviation from established datums. As stated by surveyor T. Westwood in Earth Review magazine, quote, "In leveling, I work from ordnance marks, or canal levels, to get the height above sea level. The puzzle to me used to be that over several miles, each level was and is treated throughout its whole length as the same level from end to end, not the least allowance being made for curvature." The Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Gulf of Suez on the Red Sea, is one clear proof of both the Earth's and water's non-convexity. The canal is 100 miles long and without any locks, so the water within is an uninterrupted continuation of the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. When it was constructed, the Earth's supposed curvature was not taken into account. It was dug along a horizontal datum line 26 feet below sea level, passing through several lakes from one sea to the other, with the datum line and the water's surface running perfectly parallel over the 100 miles. Another good example is the Dunyang-Kunshan Bridge, the longest bridge in the world, just over 102 miles long, which runs parallel to the Yangtze River and connects the Shanghai and Nanjing provinces. This bridge is approximately the same length as the Suez Canal, and was also built without factoring the alleged curvature of the Earth. If Earth was actually a globe 24,900 miles in circumference, spherical trigonometry dictates that the center of both the Suez Canal and the Dunyang-Kunshan Bridge would bulge over 1,666 feet higher than either end. Engineer W. Winkler was published in the Earth Review regarding the Earth's supposed curvature, stating, "As an engineer of many years' standing, I saw that this absurd allowance is only permitted in school books. No engineer would dream of allowing anything of the kind. I have projected many miles of railways and many more of canals, and the allowance has not even been thought of, much less allowed for. This allowance for curvature means this, that it is 8 inches for the first mile of a canal, and increasing at the ratio by the square of the distance in miles. Thus, a small navigable canal for boats, say 30 miles long, will have, by the above rule, an allowance for curvature of 600 feet. Think of that, and then please credit engineers as not being quite such fools. Nothing of the sort is allowed. We no more think of allowing 600 feet for a line of 30 miles of railway or canal than of wasting our time trying to square the circle." Railroads are another example of large-scale construction projects spanning hundreds or even thousands of miles, working from an established datum line and without deviating for the entire length. The Manchester Ship Canal Company, in an official statement published in Earth Review magazine, confirmed, quote, "It is customary in railway and canal constructions for all levels to be referred to a datum, which is nominally horizontal, and is so shown on all sections. It is not the practice in laying out public works to make allowances for the curvature of the Earth." As an example, the London and North Western Railway forms a straight line 180 miles long between London and Liverpool. The railroad's highest point, midway at Birmingham Station, is only 240 feet above sea level. But if Earth was actually a globe of given proportions, the 180-mile stretch of rail would form an arc with its center point at Birmingham raising over a mile, a full 5,400 feet above London and Liverpool. A surveyor and engineer of 30 years, published in the Birmingham Weekly Mercury, stated, "I am thoroughly acquainted with the theory and practice of civil engineering. However bigoted some of our professors may be in the theory of surveying according to the prescribed rules, yet it is well known amongst us that such theoretical measurements are incapable of any practical illustration. All our locomotives are designed to run on what may be regarded as true levels or flats. There are, of course, partial inclines or gradients here and there, but they are always accurately defined and must be carefully traversed. But anything approaching to 8 inches in the mile, increasing as the square of the distance, could not be worked by any engine that was ever yet constructed. Taking one station with another all over England and Scotland, it may be stated that all the platforms are on the same relative level. The distance between eastern and western coasts of England may be set down as 300 miles. If the prescribed curvature was indeed as represented, the central stations at Rugby or Warwick ought to be close upon 3 miles higher than a chord drawn from the two extremities. If such was the case, there is not a driver or stoker within the kingdom that would be found to take charge of the train. We can only laugh at those of your readers who seriously give us credit for such venturesome exploits as running trains round spherical curves. Horizontal curves on levels are dangerous enough. Vertical curves would be 1,000 times worse, and with our rolling stock constructed as at present, physically impossible. 9. Long-distance photography. We are consistently able to observe objects at incredibly long distances, far beyond what would be possible if Earth was actually a globe of given proportions. By inputting the observer height and distance viewed into an Earth curvature calculator, it is easy to check how much a target should be obstructed on a globe Earth. For example, it is often possible to see the Chicago skyline from sea level, 60 miles away across Lake Michigan. In 2015, after photographer Joshua Nowicki photographed this phenomenon, several news channels quickly claimed his picture to be a superior mirage, an atmospheric anomaly caused by temperature inversion. While these certainly do occur, the skyline in question was facing right side up and clearly seen, unlike a hazy, illusory mirage, and on a ball Earth 24,900 miles in circumference should be a full 2,400 feet below the horizon. In Genoa, Italy, from only 70 feet above sea level, on clear days, it is possible to see the distant islands of Elba, Gorgona, Caprea, and Corsica, which are 81, 99, 102, and 125 miles away. If Earth was truly a globe of given proportions, all 4 islands could never be visible for such an observer, and would be hidden behind 3,300, 5,200, 5,600, and 8,700 feet of curved water. From Anchorage, Alaska, at an elevation of 102 feet, on clear days, both Mount Foraker and Mount McKinley can be seen in their entirety, standing straight from base to summit with the naked eye from 120 and 130 miles away, respectively. If Earth was really a ball of given circumference, both mountains should be leaning back away from the observer, with the lower half of each mountain completely obstructed from view. Based on verifiable curvature calculations, 7,719 feet of Mount Foraker's 17,400-foot summit and 9,220 feet of Mount McKinley's 20,320-foot summit should be hidden behind a giant bulge of curved globular Earth. The current record-breaking longest-distance zoom photograph recently captured Pic Gaspard from Pic de Finestrelles, a whopping 275 miles away, with an observer height of approximately 9,000 feet, from which, based on correct curvature calculations, the entire 12,740-foot mountain should be invisible behind nearly 6 miles of curved Earth. Even more recently, flat earthers like J. Tolan Media have been filming using infrared zoom cameras at high altitudes to capture lakes, mountains, and other landmarks up to an incredible 1,000 miles away. If Earth was really a globe the size we are told, many of the landmarks photographed would be hidden behind upwards of 70 miles of curved Earth. 10. Lighthouses. The distance from which various lighthouse lights around the world are visible at sea also far exceeds what could be found on a globe of given proportions. For example, the Dunkirk light in southern France, at an altitude of 194 feet, is visible from a boat 10 feet above sea level, 28 miles away. Spherical trigonometry dictates that if Earth was a globe with the given curvature rate, this light should be hidden 190 feet below the horizon. The Port Nicholson light in New Zealand is 420 feet above sea level and visible from 35 miles away, where it should be 220 feet below the horizon. The Agero light in Norway is 154 feet above high water and visible from 28 statute miles, where it should be 230 feet below the horizon. The light at Madras on the Esplanade is 132 feet high and visible from 28 miles away, where it should be 250 feet below the line of sight. The Cordonin light on the west coast of France is 207 feet high and visible from 31 miles away, where it should be 280 feet below the line of sight. The light at Cape Bonavista, Newfoundland, is 150 feet above sea level and visible at 35 miles, where it should be 491 feet below the horizon. The lighthouse steeple of St. Botolph's Parish Church in Boston is 290 feet tall and visible from over 40 miles away, where it should be hidden a full 800 feet below the horizon. The Isle of Wight Lighthouse in England is 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, a distance at which modern astronomers say the light should fall 996 feet below the line of sight. The Cape Legulas Lighthouse in South Africa is 33 feet high, 238 feet above sea level, and can be seen for over 50 miles. If the world was a globe, this light would fall 1,400 feet below an observer's line of sight. And finally, the lighthouse at Port Said, Egypt, at an elevation of only 60 feet, has been seen an astonishing 58 miles away, where according to modern astronomy, it should be 2,182 feet below the line of sight. 11. Impossible atmosphere. If Earth was truly a globe, constantly spinning eastwards at over 1,000 miles per hour, it stands to reason that helicopters and hot air balloons should be able to simply hover over the surface of the Earth and wait for their destinations to come to them. For example, during the Red Bull Stratosphere dive, Felix Baumgartner, spending 3 hours ascending over New Mexico, should have landed 2,500 miles west into the Pacific Ocean, but instead actually landed a few dozen miles east of the takeoff point. Likewise, vertically fired cannonballs and other projectiles should fall significantly due west on an eastward spinning ball. In actual fact, however, whenever this has been tested, vertically fired cannonballs shoot upwards an average of 14 seconds ascending, 14 seconds descending, and fall back to the ground no more than 2 feet away from the cannon, sometimes directly back into the muzzle. To account for this problem, globe defenders claim that gravity somehow magically and inexplicably drags the entire lower atmosphere of the Earth in perfect synchronization up to some undetermined height where this progressively faster and faster spinning atmosphere gives way to the non-spinning, non-gravitized, non-atmosphere of supposed infinite vacuum space. NASA refuses to answer at what altitude this impossible feat allegedly happens, but the effect such a transition would have on a craft traversing it would be disastrous. It is also scientifically refuted by the simple fact that vacuums cannot exist